everyone, welcome to My City Videos. Today we are live at Oregon State University. If you don't already know, My City Videos is a video magazine all about Corvallis, great people in our great city, events, places, and today we're talking about nonprofits and people who are doing great work not only in Corvallis but around the world. And so let's get to our first guest, who is Chuck Kelley. And Chuck is with an organization called Bridge Builders International. Chuck, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to be here.
I appreciate your time. Chuck, give us a history of Bridge Builders.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're a small organization that we're from Corvallis, but we work in Latvia, one of the little Baltic nations. And the history of it really goes with my family. My family comes from this little nation, and during the war they fled the Soviet Union in 1944. And they lived in Nazi labor camps and etc. And they went to California, and that's where I was born. So I grew up in a family that just focused a lot on trying to help the people who left the country, and then later on to try to help people behind the Iron Curtain.
Was Latvia and the culture a big part of your family growing up?
Yeah,
Did you
absolutely.
speak a different language?
No, it was part of the culture, but not part of the language, because my name is Kelley. My dad is American, and so we spoke only English. But once a month, my grandfather had a prayer meeting in his home where he called all of his friends to pray for believers behind the Iron Curtain. And I grew up with that for years and years. And that's something that touched my heart. It also expanded my own personal vision. So in 1985, I started to go to Latvia. At the time, I was a pastor here in Oregon, and I just wanted to help. And by 1991, when the Soviet Union imploded and Latvia became free again, I found myself taking first dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of people to Latvia to help in any way they can with education, agriculture, business, media, orphan care, humanitarian aid, etc. And so that's what we do. We build living bridges from the U.S. to Latvia and beyond.
Give us a little background on Latvia. Was it always Latvia a part of the Soviet Union? Mm-hmm. Share the history of Latvia a little bit with us.
Latvia is a little nation in northeastern Europe, and our ancestors come from India. And they migrated 4,000 years ago. And so the Latvian language is actually akin to Sanskrit or to Hindi, which is very interesting. But this little country has only had 40 years of freedom in its entire history. Since the 9th century, it's been occupied by the Vikings, the Lithuanians, Poles, Swedes, Russians, Germans, Soviets, Nazis, Soviets again. And so it is a small people group, 2 million people, small country the size of Ireland or West Virginia, and yet it's right in the middle of a very interesting location on the Baltic Sea. So it's a nation that's suffered a lot. It's a nation that's part of the European Union, but yet it's the poorest nation in the European Union. And we do a lot of work in the eastern part of Latvia, which is the poorest region in the country. So there's a lot of poverty and alcoholism, addictions, huge issues there.
So what does it look like, Chuck, when a big communist country occupies or controls it, and then now they're free? What kind of struggles does a country struggle with at that point? What are they looking for, and how do they build?
Well, of course, in the late 80s, all of Eastern Europe, they were looking forward for freedom, to freedom from Soviet Union, and they were looking at anything from the West as being great. And so at the first, that's what they wanted, anything from the West, from Europe, from U.S. But they found out that not everything that we bring to the party is good. So they were disillusioned by Americans, by Europeans as well. They want freedom, but they also need an infrastructure, and the Soviet Union had an artificial infrastructure, an artificial economy. So really, the Latvian and the Russian mafia essentially took over for a couple of years. And it was a very, very wild place in the early 90s. And then slowly they began to gain recognition, became part of NATO, part of the European Union, and began to establish itself. But this most recent economic crisis that we have felt here, they have felt in much more powerful and destructive ways over there. There's a lot of frustration.
So what is the current climate, and what do you think the future holds for Latvia right now? I mean, are there jobs available? And you're there how many times a year usually?
Well, I go to Latvia 4 times a year for 5 or 6 weeks, and I've done that for 15 years. So a lot. I have an apartment in Riga, which is the capital city. 15% of the population of Latvia has left Latvia in the last 6 years to find jobs in Ireland, England, Norway, Sweden, and Germany. 15%. And these are the people that the nation can least afford to lose. The young people, even young professionals, people with university degrees who could make very little money in Latvia, they go to Norway and they make 5 times more working in a fish company. And so that's the part of the struggles there. So people have really developed an attitude of cynicism that the government's corrupt, it's not going to work, and they're not going to find jobs, so they're leaving. So it's a very difficult environment. There's a lot of increasing crime. It's a hub for the human trafficking industry. It's a sending place for the human trafficking industry. And so we've tried to develop responses and ministries that meet many different social and spiritual needs in the nation.
Great, and let's continue with that. So tell us some things that Bridge Builders has done and is doing to provide relief and help, and what type of things are you guys doing?
Well, the first thing that we started, since I was a pastor here in Corvallis in the late 80s and early 90s, is that our church in Corvallis built a sister church partnership with 2 churches in Latvia. And then we found that was a very fruitful thing, because we were able to take people from Corvallis, and we've taken dozens from Corvallis, probably more than 100 from this town, to Latvia to help in education, in economics, in music, in art, counseling, prison ministry, work with alcoholics and addicts, work with street kids. We've taken them, and they have done, everyone's used their gifts and talents in a special way. So that sister church idea grew and grew and grew, and over the years we've developed some partnerships with about 150 different organizations in America and Western Europe to try to give some focus of their attention to Latvia. So what I do is I travel the country in the U.S. looking for people who have something to bring to the table, and let's get them involved. And when I'm in Latvia, I'm a completely different person. We helped to start a seminary, so I'm a prof there. We have a ministry with orphans, especially teenage orphan girls, because they're the most high risk. They grow up in the orphanage. At 18, they're turned out of the orphanage. They really don't have good education. They don't have good social skills. And so these are the girls that go to the streets, and they're marks for the human trafficking. So we have a work for and with teenage orphan girls. We have an agricultural emphasis. We have a sheep farm with 200 sheep that was started by people from Corvallis that wanted to help using their skills. And now the sheep farm is making a profit, and it is funding the camp that we have, which is about 180 acres out in eastern Latvia. So we have children's camps and youth camps. And again, we're always inviting people from the U.S. to come. For example, this summer we're looking for people to serve for 2 weeks or 6 weeks or 12 weeks at our camp. We're looking for people to be involved in the teenage orphan camp. We want people to come and to help with the sheep barn that we need to build. So there's a lot that we try to do to help.
Yeah. So Chuck, how can people get a hold of you? You do scheduled trips throughout the year, and like you said, there's already things on the ground there in process that probably needs a little more support.
Yes. Yeah, well, we need people to be interested, we need people to pray, need people to go, and they can contact us through the website, bridgebuildersint.com, and find out. We also have an introduction to Latvia trip this August. Should be very interesting. We're just inviting people to come and to see the culture, learn about the history, come and see the work that we do. And so that's a general invitation to anyone, really. But we're always looking for people to use whatever gifts and talents they have on the front line. And there's a lot to get done.
Yeah, well, Chuck, I wish we had more time.
Yeah.
We brought some pictures and things, but ran out of time. But again, a great work in Latvia, and thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. So, as you may have caught the website, if you want to get involved with Bridge Builders International, the website again is bridgebuildersint.com, and great work they're doing. Our next guest is Aslan Noakes, and Aslan, thank you for being here. And Aslan is from Corvallis, but doing some great work in Haiti. So Aslan, tell us, you're currently an RN here at Oregon State University. So share a little bit about yourself and what you're doing in Haiti.
Well, honestly, our church, the church I go to, Suburban Christian Church, has had a long-time connection with Haiti. We have a sister church there in Font-Cheval, and it's always something I heard about growing up. But when the earthquake happened in 2010 in January, I was in nursing school. I was almost done, and I was thinking to myself, boy, I wonder if I could do something to help out. And I started looking into it, found a group to go with called FAME, Fellowship of Associates of Medical Evangelism. I didn't know anybody. I met them all in Miami at the airport. Was the only nursing student that was part of that team. Physicians, nurse practitioners, nurses, respiratory therapists. And we all went down together to Haiti, and that was my very first experience there. And we worked with Haitian Christian Mission, based out of Font-Parisien, which is right on the border of the Dominican Republic. And they are the organization that our sister church is part of as well. So I was able to work with them indirectly that initial trip. Really got my feet wet, really started my passion for Haiti.
So what was it like there? Give us you've been there 4 times since the earthquake?
Yeah, just got back from my 4th trip a couple weeks ago.
Okay. So give us an overview of progression since maybe your first visit, conditions over there, and what you're seeing compared to maybe now.
Yeah.
I mean, is it getting rebuilt, or is there facility structures in place?
There's a lot of ups and downs in Haiti. There's a lot of political instability, and initially after the earthquake, there was a lot of mass chaos. A lot of emergency relief, which our team was not really designed to do. We were there about 2 months after the earthquake in March of 2010. But since then, actually, this last trip I just came back from, I saw significant cleanup in Port-au-Prince. There are people still in tent camps, but oftentimes the people that were living in tents, maybe this is better than what they had initially. Haiti's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, so long-standing poverty there. But there was elections going on, not this December, but the December before that. Or no, wait, it was this December. They were having elections for their new president, and there was a lot of corruption. There was rioting, things like that. It was really unsafe to be there, really unstable. But they have a new president, Martelli, who everyone's very happy with. And when the people are happy, the nation is more stable. So currently, I really see things going in a good direction. Seen a lot of cleanup. There's a lot of really good organizations there right now plugged in. So.
Yeah. Now, when you went, I don't know if it was this last time or the time before, you were saying that, I mean, doctors were pulling you over, and you were like, well, I've never done that before. And they were like, we don't care. You're a nurse, right? And you were doing things that, probably outside your scope. Share some stories.
Well, when I was there in August, September of this last year of 2011, I was there by myself. I was checking on water filters that a group from my church had brought in April. These water filters that filter out cholera, which is a huge problem right now. It's in the water. And so I was checking on them to see if they're working, you know, parts are broken, just kind of doing a check with the pastors of the communities we had brought the water filters to. So I wasn't planning on doing any medical. I didn't even bring scrubs with me or a stethoscope. And one of the Haitian doctors there that works at the mission where I stay asked me to come do an ultrasound. I do volunteer at the Options Pregnancy Center here in Corvallis. And he said, can I have you do an ultrasound on this woman? She's in labor. She's been in labor for 8 hours. She's not progressing. She's having twins. I really need to check the position of these babies. I said, absolutely. So I came over, did the ultrasound, and sure enough, the lower twin was not in a good position for a vaginal delivery. And so he said, so what are you doing right now? I said, well, I was going to go to Port-au-Prince to run some errands, but he said, will you help me do a C-section? I said, okay, I know you know I'm a nurse, but I don't do OB, I don't do peds, and I definitely don't do surgery. I said, I'm an ambulatory college health nurse, but you know, I'm willing to help in any way you need. I just don't want you to think I know what I'm doing. And so there we go. It was the two of us. We didn't have an anesthesiologist. So we had 2 Haitian nurses that were standing by with whatever needed to be done. And so it was he and I that started up with the surgery. We had a sedative that we were able to put in her IV, but that was it. She was still pretty conscious, kind of moaning throughout the process, which was very disturbing to me at the time. Nurses try to relieve pain and not cause pain. And so it was really difficult. I found out afterwards that she had no memory of this, which would have been nice to know at the time. But I did bring a couple pictures.
Yeah, let's see if we can roll the pictures if we have them lined up. There she is. And
yeah, that's me on the left with Dr. Maxine there. You can see the sweat on his brow. The power, we did lose power initially as we were getting started with the surgery. They did hurry and find some gasoline for the generator. So that was the initial cut there.
All right. Was there another picture?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are with the twins.
Yeah, a girl and a boy, and actually got asked to be the godmother, which I felt like I was on cloud 9. And she named them both after me. The little girl is Aslan, and the boy is Asman. And I was able to go visit them. I have another picture of them as well. Just a few weeks ago I was there, and they're 5 months old now, very chubby. It was great to see them. They're doing very, very well. Of course, I did bring them OSU onesies to wear. Go Beavers.
That's great. So one's name is Aslan, and the other is?
The boy is Asman.
Asman. Wow, that's awesome.
Quite an honor.
Wow.
Unexpected
awesome.
honor. Unexpected surgery.
And do you stay in touch with Mom?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm friends with a lot of the translators down there, so I can call down. Sometimes I Skype with them. I've got to see her on Skype, actually on Thanksgiving, and check in with her. So great to see her. And trying to learn a little bit of Creole, which is the language they speak in Haiti. It's kind of a mix between French and Western African grammar. It's a really interesting language. So,
So Aslan, what's next for Haiti? How can people in Corvallis get involved and maybe go out on a trip, even if they're not nurses? Is there still a need for maybe going with you and your team?
I do something different every time I go. Sometimes it's public health. You know, sometimes it's been construction. We're trying to get involved with more agriculture as well. My church, Suburban Christian Church, is primarily who I go through.
Okay.
So if you want to call them, their number is 541-753-2802.
And I think they're on the web. You could just Google
Suburban Christian Church in
Corvallis and connect with a team. Anything else you'd tell someone who is kind of just, man, Haiti, I don't know if I want to go to...
You know, I really think that the way that the press portrays Haiti is a scary place, a dangerous place, a place with a lot of chaos and a lot of disaster. And sure, there are still some of those things remaining. There's a lot of hurt still from all the human loss and devastation from the earthquake. But when I think of Haiti, I don't think of a country in mass destruction. I think about all the faces that I've come to love and consider family, honestly, when I go down. So I just think there's a lot of beautiful people with big hearts that want to see the change in their country. So
awesome. Aslan, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Really, really appreciate it. Well, we have some great things happening in and around Corvallis, people who are going out and making a difference in our world, and it's really exciting. You're watching My City Videos live, and today, as you can see, we're at Oregon State University, and our next guest has also been serving in our community for a long time, and her name is Maria Chavez-Haroldson. And Maria, good to have you with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, and Maria, you're with an organization called CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates.
Correct.
And tell us about it. Give us a history of the organization, maybe nationally, and then maybe locally.
Sure, glad to. CASA, or Court-Appointed Special Advocates, was established by a judge in Washington who saw the need for a voice in court for children who have been removed from their homes due to abuse or neglect. And in court, at a court hearing, there'll be an attorney for the parents, there'll be a prosecutor present, but there was no one speaking for the child. So Judge Suckup created a committee to address the child's specific needs. Because in court, a judge has to make a decision regarding the child's placement in a few minutes. So a CASA is present, we are a party to the case, and there's actually an Oregon revised statute. So we're statutorily mandated to have a CASA for every child who's removed from their home. So at this point, what a CASA does is go through a 40-hour training, pretty intense, addresses multiple agencies, mental health, the judicial system, how to advocate, childhood trauma, on and on and on, because a CASA will advocate, investigate, monitor, and evaluate that child's case for the duration of that child's case in court. Because if a child is removed, I'll use myself as an example. So Maria is removed from her home because of abuse or neglect within the home. She becomes a ward of the court. Then there's a court hearing to establish that, and within 48 hours, we get the phone call asking a CASA to be assigned to that case. Well, a judge does the assignment. He will say, who is the CASA assigned to this case? Wonderful thing about CASA Voices for Children in Benton County is that we're one of only 2 programs in the state that have a CASA trained and ready to go for every single child removed from their home. Most counties don't have enough advocates to cover 100%. We have been at 100% for many years, and we've been in Benton County for over a decade.
Wow, that's awesome. So if doesn't the state just say we're always for the kids anyway? I mean, why do we need an advocate for them? Isn't the state or the courts going to do in the best interest of the kids, or not always the case?
Great question. Okay, so let's say, for example, because a lot of people believe we're the child welfare system, and we're not. CASA is not child welfare. So the child welfare, child protective services worker is responsible for physically removing the child from the home, and they open up a case in the child welfare system. But it's an overburdened system at this point with the economic challenges and fundings being reduced each year, that if I'm a child welfare worker, caseworker, I might have 12 cases on my caseload. But if I'm a CASA in Benton County, I have 1.
Wow.
So imagine the time I can devote. So we work in conjunction with the child welfare worker, but we also have the community voice. So let's say the child welfare worker says, I believe the best plan for Maria is to be returned back to her parents. A CASA might say, in court, Your Honor, the facts indicate the parents have not completed substance abuse treatment. The father, who is being ordered to go to domestic violence classes, has not completed those. The UAs have come back dirty. So we're giving very factual information to the judge to assess whether or not the recommendation child welfare is making is the best way to go. So with information, it's nice to have sometimes a difference of opinion. And we talk very openly and candidly with child welfare and say, we don't agree with you or we do agree with you. But they know before we go into court. So we submit reports to the judge, factual reports having to do with the child's emotional well-being, the current placement, how that child's doing in the educational program or school they're attending, how they're doing with vaccinations. We address everything. So the judge then in a few minutes has all this information prior to the court hearing to know the decision that's best for that child.
Mm. Tell us, are relationships being formed? Does the CASA have an opportunity to meet with the child?
Absolutely. It's important, it's critical for the CASA to know this child, to know, in this case, I'm using the scenario of Maria. If I'm assigned to a case, I know what Maria likes, I know her cultural backgrounds, I know her preferences, I know her fears. I know how she's doing in school because I go to school to see how she's doing. I know how she's doing in the foster care placement she might be currently in because I go visit that foster care placement. There's policy that indicates as a CASA I don't transport. So we have very clear standards, national standards and policies we follow. But I'm constantly checking to see how Maria's doing in all areas of her life so that I can stand before the court and say, Your Honor, here's the facts of the case, here's the recommendation, and I would know Maria's case very well. Oftentimes within Benton County we have the 3 judges who believe very much in our advocacy, that they will always ask, I want the CASA information because it's referred to as the latest and the greatest information.
Wow. And tell us about CASAs throughout other counties in the state. It seems like Benton County is doing great. Probably can use more help, more funding. So give us an overview of how other places are using CASA and maybe how Benton can grow and become more self-sustaining.
Okay. Well, in regards to funding, sustained funding is always a challenge because our funding is being reduced at the state and local level. Currently, I'm working on 5 grants just to try to keep us in business, you might say. We do have 50 volunteers, and they each probably volunteered 10 to 12 hours a month, very active in their cases, ongoing technical support. We currently moved from a 600 square foot office that we had for years into a 1,500 square foot office so that we can do our training and offer technical support, confidential meetings regarding these confidential cases all in one location. And we're directly across from the courthouse now. Mm-hmm. So we are more efficient in what we do. In the state and nationally, every county has a CASA program. In Benton County, it's CASA Voices for Children. So there's an executive director, and the infrastructure varies depending on demographics. For example, in Multnomah County, they might have 14 staff members and a marketing specialist. Lane County has a great program with their own property. In Benton County, we're renting space. It's myself and 1 other full-time employee and 1 part-time. So there's 3 of us, and there's typically about 100 cases. 90% of the cases we have come from the city of Corvallis. So child abuse does exist here, neglect does exist here, but CASA's here to stay, and we're doing great work. We were recently nominated and chosen as the nonprofit volunteer of the year by the Corvallis Chamber, so we're really proud of that.
You should be. It's a great honor, and you guys do great work.
Thank you.
So if someone wanted to become a CASA, give us an overview of how much time commitment, what's involved, background checks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell us how people can get involved both physically and monetarily.
Well, anyone can contact, I always say, CASA, mi casa, su casa. You can actually, any community member can come in and walk in our doors and get a tour, understand the dynamics of structurally how we work. We are very transparent. We can tell you anything you want to know about our budget, how money is spent. Donations can be made on our website or drop in person. I love the communication one-on-one so they can see where we live and see where we exist and what we do. Wonderful things happen with CASA. A lot of children are reunified with their family who do grow their capacity to parent. Sometimes that's not possible, so we see wonderful adoptions occurring. So most children do return to their parents and end up living in a safe, nurturing home. So any person can come in and find out information. Website is www.casa-vfc.org. And you can mail in. Sometimes our most sustainable funding comes from the retired person at $10 to $25 a month.
Well, Maria, thank you so much for all that you're doing. And lastly, you guys do a few events throughout the year. Anything coming up that you want to mention?
We have our yearly CASA Catwalk. We involve about 50 community partners and businesses, and it's a very collaborative approach, but we have models that are community members. And this year, our Master of Ceremonies will be Jim Patterson, the new Corvallis City Manager.
Oh, awesome. We'll look for that and can find more info on your website, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Really appreciate it. Well, thank you all for coming out to see us online or on CCAT 29, where we air these broadcasts. And from mycityvideos.com, my name is Jeff Silverman. Till next time, thank you.